Hey guys and gals, welcome back to Forget Me Not History Guide. Today we are in Wilkinson County, Georgia. And Wilkinson County, Georgia is literally the middle of Georgia, or close to the middle of Georgia. We're about 25 miles south of Milledgeville, which Milledgeville was the capital of Georgia from 1803 to 1865. Milledgeville was moved, so the capital was moved to Milledgeville and planned by the governor at that time, John Millage. He actually wanted a centralized government in the middle of the state. So he sent his surveyors out, and they pretty much found that Milledgeville was the direct center of the state, and so that's where the capital was moved to. And Milledgeville was the capital of Georgia until 1865 or thereafter. It was moved to Atlanta, where it currently resides. What a lot of people don't realize, or they don't think about, back then this area was an economic boom. You had the capital in Milledgeville just a day buggy ride away. All this land out here in Wilkinson County, it wasn't nothing. It's all grown up now, underbrush everywhere. But back then, it wasn't nothing but farmland for as far as the eye could see. My granddaddy, he was born in 1929. He farmed all this land. He told me that they didn't even have no deer down here. He said there wasn't no woods around here for the deer to live in. The deer didn't start moving in until around the 40s and 50s, when all the woods started coming up around here and people stopped farming. There's very minimal economic activity in this area nowadays. You got the chalk mine in Wilkinson County and Washington County, Twigs. But outside of that, there ain't much economy here anymore. But back then, this was the agricultural economic boom of the state, this area. You look back at the census records, you can just see where, the population was just growing by leaps and bounds through the 1830s and 1840s. People coming here, getting land, farming, selling all their goods in Milledgeville and Gordon. Central Georgia Railroad was, shipping all that stuff out, shipping it north, shipping it south, shipping it to the ports to take to Europe. It's a whole different world nowadays. So back here, this was an old whiskey mill back during Prohibition time. And this huge indention right here, which I guess you can see it on the camera. It's a pretty big indention in person, but I'm going to step down in here. This was a spring, and it flowed out right there. And right down in there is what is called by the locals Bull Branch, coming up out of this hole. But yeah, during Prohibition time, there was actually an illegal still back here where they were making whiskey and I guess selling it on the black market. Apparently, from what I've been told, the Wilkinson County Sheriff found out about it, and he came down here and busted the operation up. And you can still see the barrels today that were full of whiskey. You can see the bullet holes where he shot the barrels to drain all the whiskey out. Here's one of them randomly laying back here. This thing's been here since, probably sitting in that same spot since the 1920s. Over 100 years now. All this area back in the 1800s used to be nothing but farmland. It was all clear cut. You can still see in some areas, you can still see the old land terraces where they had the farmland laid out. Here's another barrel. Now what I was told was those holes at the bottom were the bullet holes where the deputy sheriff shot it up. There's not much left of it today, as you can tell. But it is kind of neat just, you know, being able to walk around and kind of be able to see exactly, you know, if you use your imagination, exactly, you know, 100 years ago or a little over 100 years ago, you can still see kind of a picture of what was going on down here. It's pretty neat. So I was walking around out here at this old steel, just kind of looking around, and I came across this right here. I love history, but I'm kind of a plant nerd too, especially when it relates to history. So this right here is it's called Adam's needle, and kind of a cool story behind it. The roots of this plant actually contain a paralytic compound in them, and so some of the Native Americans, they used to actually take the root of this plant, from what I've been told, and they would make a pasty compound out of it, and they would put it in little tiny streams, and put it into the water, and it would actually paralyze the fish. Now, what it done to their bodies, who knows, but apparently the fish would, as they, you know, suck the water through their gills, it would cause paralysis. Now, I would imagine, you know, a human, it would take a significantly larger amount for that to happen, but it's kind of neat. It's actually, that's a small one. They get a lot bigger, and the tips of them are really pointy. Still wandering around down here in this old mill. Now this is an American holly, and American holly actually has an extremely high caffeine content in the leaves, even more so than coffee and teas. The Indians used to actually boil holly leaves and basically make a liquid out of it that they would drink before religious ceremonies. And it had so much caffeine that it would actually make them throw up and things like that. That's what I've been told by some of the old timers that I know. Little secret, I've actually tried holly leaves, and it does have caffeine in it. I've never thrown up off of it, but I did go like 4 days one time without any caffeine. I had a horrible headache, and I made some tea out of holly leaves. Probably not a good idea, but I done it, and sure enough, I could tell I got an energy boost from it, and the coffee, or the caffeine withdrawals went away. But yeah, it's pretty neat out here. There's actually quite a bit of water. You can't see it from here, but there's quite a bit of water down in all that branch. From what I've been told by the property owner, that branch down through there used to be way deeper, in some spots even 6 feet deep. But right up from us in that direction, there was a lake built there in the 1980s or 90s, and whenever they built that lake, you know, this branch significantly dried up. And of course, the spring up there that they used to make the whiskey down here, I imagine it was corn whiskey probably, it actually dried up too along the same time that they built that pond or lake. Actually, it's about a 15 acre lake. It's pretty good size, but it's pretty wild that, you know, the water table, this area used to be really rural, and it still is, but you know, over the years, a lot of people moved in this area, And I would imagine between the water table dropping significantly, rain not as often as it was 30 years ago, and at the top of the hill where you see that clearing, that lake being built, that's all that's left of this branch down here. There's not much water in it at all, and it's actually been raining a significant amount here, so that just shows you like how as the environment changes, it really changes everything. Even man-made structures, how they can change and affect the environment long term as it has down here in this branch. I was told that, my father, when he was a kid, this branch would be 3 to 6 feet deep. You could come down here and swim. I mean, you see it nowadays. This is the rainy season, and you can see that there's barely any water in here. Now, I have been down here before in the summer and seen plenty of moccasins. This is Easter, so, it's still a little bit cool in middle Georgia, so no moccasins out right now. But they'll be coming out soon. You see a lot of old fat lighter pine stumps around here. There were some big old pines planted in here in the 40s, and a lot of them have been cut, over the years, but their old fat lighter pine stumps are still sticking up out of the ground everywhere, all across this land. Now this right here, this is a crabapple tree, and you can just barely see the bloom right there. It's got a bunch of blooms on there, but you can't really tell with this camera. Now you can eat crab apples, and I would imagine they're pretty nutritious if you can swallow them. They're one of the most sour things you will eat. It's like putting a couple of, what are them sour warhead candies, like dropping a couple of them in your mouth at once. I know, because I've ate a few. I'll be walking along here when it's got some on there and just try to make myself eat them. I tell you what, it is beautiful out here today. Perfect spring weather down here in Wilkinson County, Georgia. Perfect. See, I happened to come across another thing I wanted to show y'all. This right here, I love this plant. It's a shrub plant, whatever you want to call it. Now this right here, this is a wax myrtle. And I know in the video, the last video, that was a Leland cypress, not a eastern red cedar. I don't know what I was thinking. But this is a wax myrtle, for all of you who may have doubts. Now, this, you can't, obviously you can't smell it, but if you were here right now, you crunch these leaves up, and they produce a extremely, aromatic odor that, it smells sweet, but it smells really woodsy too. And the Indians, they actually used to take a bunch of these leaves off of wax myrtles, and they'd crumple them up, and they would rub their entire skin with it, and it acts as a natural scent repellent. Now, when I say Indians, I mean the Creek Indians. The Creek Indians, lived on this land for thousands of years until, the land lottery started taking place in Georgia, in this area specifically around, I think 1802 was the first land lottery. And the Indians were ordered by the United States government to succeed this land to the government. They were all moved west out past the Ocmulgee, and after that, all this land, I think it was 202 acres, was each land lot, was lotteried off to the public. and you can actually go into the Georgia historical records and you can see who each individual was, their first and last name, that won that particular numbered land lot. And if you go to your county courthouse, you can look through some of the deeds and you can see over the decades how that land was transferred. But like I said, before the land lotteries, this was Creek Indian territory. All up and down the Ocmulgee, the Oconee, practically throughout entire middle and some parts of South Georgia. You had the Cherokee up in North Georgia and some Seminole down in Florida. Maybe small parts of the tip of South Georgia. Yeah, a little more history for y'all. So I know it was a shorter video today. No cemetery, but you know, it's Easter weekend and it's been a really busy weekend. So I was just tromping around out through these woods and figured I'd, you know, share this. Hope y'all enjoyed the video though, and make sure to like, subscribe, and share so I can get more of this content out to y'all. Happy Easter.